World of Warcraft is filled to the brim with a ton of Easter eggs, secrets, and hidden areas, and today I want to go across Azeroth and highlight my top 10 personal favorite hidden areas in the game. To reiterate, these are my personal favorites and I am only highlighting 10 of them, so please share what your favorite secret spots in the game are down in the comments. Let's get started. In the number 10 spot are the Hills of Elwynn. This spot goes out to two general areas, both surrounding Stormwind City. A massive part of the vanilla version of World of Warcraft were the additions of decorations around the world that serve no purpose but to be something to look at while you are flying from one place to another on a flight path. One of the most popular wish likely goes to this area around this river in Elwynn Forest north of Northshire, and I've always thought this place was really cool because you could see a house and a couple of camps along the river with a beautiful waterfall. With the Cataclysm expansion and the occasional updates since then, we have seen this area expanded even more with a couple of details here and there. The other general area is west of Stormwind instead of east, and is this river with these cool waterfalls that pour into Elwynn Forest and Westfall, which are called the Thunder Falls. This place in particular is cool because of this house. Similar to the other one, this area was just out of bounds, and I was always interested in it, which when the Cataclysm expansion released and we could now fly in the Eastern Kingdoms, this is one of the first places I came to. A small bit of nostalgia that I have is that I used to fish up here in the river all the time, but I don't really remember why. Aside from all that, I also like the little details in this entire area with all the fallen logs and whatnot. In the number 9 spot are the steam pools. This is another area located up in some mountains, inaccessible without flying, but this spot in particular was introduced with the Cataclysm expansion and is a spot that many players stumble upon when flying from Faerless to Silithus or vice versa. The idea of the steam pool specifically is cool, and this is a pretty nice looking location. But the biggest thing going on here is this massive goblin resort. You have a very fun area all around here with a bunch of details just packed into here. You got a ton of resort guests, including a bunch of children just hanging out here. You can talk to most of them, but they tend to have the same small selection of dialogue. There is a dock with a boat called the Lucky Bucket, which could sail in this relatively shallow lake. You got these riding mammoths that the resort staff are washing and taking care of somehow. Right next to the compound, you have this massive oil drill with oil slimes infesting the area. You have the head chef of the area by the name of Gordon Tramsey, which sounds very familiar. And you got the assistant resort director here, who seems to think that you work for him. Just all in all, this is a really random area just out of the way that is full of fun, immersive details. In the number 8 spot is this cave in Mulgore. This is a relatively random location in Kalimdor that is pretty easy to miss. There are a bunch of caves and areas similar to this around Kalimdor that you can explore. A much more popular one is the cave in the southern tip of Kalimdor, super far away from anywhere you would normally explore, that players always like to go to just for the fun of it. But this cave above Mulgore always stood out for me. A large part of it comes from nostalgia because I remember exploring Azeroth for the first time, and I had a conversation with a random person on my server who directed me towards this area. I then came here and explored it, told one of my friends about it, and we talked about how cool of a location the spot is because of how it was just a random addition to a large world. In the number 7 spot is the secret Aerie. This is a pretty fleshed out area in the mists of Pandaria that was never really utilized for anything. In between the Valley of the Four Winds and the Kunlai Summit, two absolutely beautiful areas, is the Veiled Stair. This is a small zone that I always loved a lot because of how tiny it was and the random little things that were here. The biggest thing was the entrance to the Terrace of Endless Spring, as well as the Tavern in the Mists, which is where the Black Market and Wrathion were located. But you got a lot of little details around here that just added a lot to this tiny region. But way north of here, on the other side of these mountains, is another location in the Veiled Stair known as the Secret Aerie. This is a very cool looking location with all the mountains surrounding this place, with all these different staircases slowly taking you up to the mountain. Which as you climb up them, you reach this location with a couple of houses and some Pandaren who are training and taking care of hawks known as People of the Sky. To my knowledge, this place doesn't serve any purpose, but you do unlock some special dialogue with the NPCs if you have completed some certain quests in the Townlong Steppes, which I think is a cool detail. Beyond all of that, you also have a variety of other animals here, including Hoggle and Hank, as well as two griffins, Little Griffin and Little Reed. In the number 6 spot is Old Ironforge. This is one of the most iconic locations in the entire game and was one of the most popular places to break out into in Vanilla WoW. Over the years, there have been a bunch of different ways to get into this area, and many of them have been fixed. but it's a challenge that some players like to undertake just because of how beautiful this area is. When the Cataclysm expansion rolled around, we saw this place officially introduced into the game, and you could just walk down here. This is a spot where Magni was hanging out at when he was a giant crystal, and there have been a couple of different purposes for this place over the years. The history of this place goes all the way back to the alphas and betas of the game, where Ironforge looked very, very different compared to how we eventually saw it with the release of the game, where this location is a remnant of that history. And ultimately, it's just a very beautiful area with all the structures and doors, the lava lake at the bottom, and all the crystals on the cave walls and roof. And the number 5 spot is the Whispering Forest. This is a location that used to be really tucked out of the way in Terrasval Glades, and eventually became an incredibly important location in the game. In the modern version of World of Warcraft, we see a lot of stuff going on here, especially from the Legion expansion, where there is a bunch of stuff going on here related to Tyr's tomb. But way back in the day, this location was a bit more humble, and it was just a really random spot that looked very beautiful. The most prominent part of this location was the circle of mushrooms, also called a fairy ring, with some fairy dragons who did some sort of ritual here. This ritual used to happen every now and then, but is a lot more common nowadays, but stumbling upon it when it happens is a very cool experience. And the number 4 spot is the Ravenholdt Manor. This is one of those weird locations that on paper a lot of people would know about, but in the story it is supposed to be pretty hidden. When it comes to your average player's experience with exploring the world in the classic versions of the game, this location is really out of the way and is actually decently hidden, though most rogue players definitely know about it, and it has served some pretty big purposes over the years. It is a nice little compound with a building and a variety of other decorations around here. I like the slightly hidden tunnel that leads here, and I just love the aesthetics and vibes of having a compound home to an order of rogues hidden in the mountains of Lordaeron. And the number 3 spot is underneath Stormwind City. This is just a classic spot that you can break out of in Stormwind City. If you go into the classic era version of the game and make your way to the trade district, you can find this torch on the wall. If you jump onto the boxes, jump onto the torch, and then jump onto the wall here, you can fall through the wall and plummet down to the underdeveloped areas underneath Stormwind. This spot was always a special spot for me because of how insanely cool it is. There are some places like this around Azeroth, the other big one being in Orgrimmar, that players like to come to. From this location you can get to some other fun areas around the Eastern Kingdoms, so it is a fun starting point for adventurers, but I always find stuff that is basically behind the scenes to be very cool. And the number 2 spot is the Arathi Coast Dwarven Farm. This is a pretty big farming area in the Arathi Highlands that is really cool. Going back to vanilla, this was a pretty random spot that served basically no purpose. It was hidden really far away from anywhere that your average player could naturally discover as a quest, and ultimately it's just a pretty basic dwarven farm, which does look really cool because of all the different structures and decorations around here. Anyone who has done Plunderstorm may recognize this spot, since it got overhauled to be the location of the starting lobby before the game begins. But other players may recognize this spot because it has been utilized every now and then over the years. You have a major quest for a rune in the Season of Discovery that takes you here, and this place also serves as a part of one of the best secrets in all World of Warcraft with the Waste of Time. But now for the number 1 spot, for my favorite hidden area in all World of Warcraft, and it just has to go to all of the areas above Ironforge Mountain. Looping back to the idea that we talked about at the start of this video, many of the locations around here serve as a beautiful location that players can look at while flying on a flight path, but it is surprisingly easy to get up here yourself and explore all around it. If you come to the northwestern corner of Loch Modan near the Algas station, you can make one slightly tricky jump up the mountain and then simply explore this entire area. You have a large area that doesn't have too many details but is still very cool looking. I love the artificial looking terrain around here that looks incredibly different compared to the more natural looking terrain you can normally find around the world. But as you travel across this expanse, you can make your way to the Ironforge airfield. This is just an incredible location with so many fun details, a bunch of buildings and NPCs, a Stormpipe guard, a pet trainer, this airplane, these dwarves fighting these ice trolls, this blocked off tunnel, and just some other fun details. But if you travel north of this location, you can eventually make your way to this large dwarven farm that is nestled in the cliffside between Ironforge Mountain and the wetlands. Just like the airfield, there are a bunch of fun decorations around here that players can generally just look at while flying. But you got this big signpost that reads "this way," which if you follow the sign, you can go into this dwarven tunnel which leads to the Void of Azeroth, which looks incredible. Back in the day, this used to drop you into old Ironforge, but nowadays it tends to just force disconnect you over and over, and you have to use the stuck character service to save your character. But beyond these two major locations, you can find a bunch of other small things around Ironforge Mountain, like a group of bears and a small camp. But the biggest thing is how you can find some more ice trolls near this cave, and one of them is actually riding on top of a wolf, which is a very interesting sight. But all in all, there are so many different hidden details all around Ironforge Mountain, which just makes it my favorite hidden area in all of World of Warcraft. And that's my list. I hope you enjoyed. There are so many different hidden locations all around Azeroth and beyond. Please feel free to share your favorite locations down in the comments. Additionally, if you like this type of video, consider watching my top 10 hidden areas in Guild Wars 2 or my top 10 hidden areas in Stardew Valley. I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves. Have a good one, everyone.